Welcome back, everyone, to the late night review. And tonight, I've been waiting to get to this movie. It's one of my very favorite movies of all time, and I love the whole franchise. It's an awesome franchise. I'm talking about Rambo, the original with Sylvester Stallone. I love this movie. It's a movie that's near and dear to me. I grew up watching this. I grew up watching this movie. We rented it over and over again. And then someone also rented it. Someone we knew rented it and brought it to our house when I was a kid, and we watched it. And besides all the times that we rented it, and then when it was on the pay channels, eventually I recorded it when it came on TV or one of the pay channels. I think it might have been one of the pay channels, but it's a great movie to me. It's very dramatic. I think the first one is probably the most dramatic, along with part four. I think out of the whole franchise, the part three and part two are mostly action. And then I think in Last Blood, that was kind of a combination. It had a lot of drama in there and action too. But I think primarily the two movies that are primarily dramas are the first one and then the fourth one. I think they're the most dramatic. But the fifth one had some pretty dramatic, that had some dramatic content too, and aspects of the story that were very dramatic. But yeah, this John Rambo, he comes home from Vietnam, meets sheriff and then some police who treat him really, really bad. He lost his friends over there, and then he found out that his friend just died of cancer when he came back. Delmore Barry, I believe his name was. And this is a movie I'd seen over and over again. I'm a big Rambo fan. I love the Rambo franchise. And I think how the story goes is very good. It's based on a book called First Blood, and in the book, I believe Rambo was supposed to be even more. He was more overwhelmed, even though he was overwhelmed by the PTSD in the movie. He was more, I think, overwhelmed and out of control in the book. I think in the book he was killing everybody, civilians. I believe I never read the book, but I heard a lot about it. And then him and the cop were a little bit more uh, equal. There's more gray area almost, but in the movie, Rambo, good guy, cop, villain, it's pretty black and white for the most part. In the movie, it's pretty black and white. But yeah, this movie, it has a special place in my heart because not only do I have a nostalgia for it, but I grew up watching it, and we played Army when I was a kid. My dad was in Vietnam. He was in Vietnam in the 173rd Airborne, and he spent time in the 101st also from 66 to 68. He was in Vietnam around the Iron Triangle area. So, yeah, and then the story that Rambo tells at the end, the PTSD, how he explains to Troutman about his friend being blown up and all that. That takes me back to the stories I heard from veterans and from my dad and all that, because he was there. And that's one thing that I always respected. Always, my dad and I, we had a rough relationship. We fought a lot, had a pretty rough childhood. My parents, they don't want to get into it too much, but they hurt me a lot. And there's a lot of bad stuff in the home that shouldn't have been allowed in. My half sister, a lot of them, they hurt me a lot. But we had good times and bad times. There was good mixed with bad. Don't want to get into that too much. We fought, but we went camping. We watched movies. There's a lot of good experiences I had too, mixed with the abuse and some of the traumatic things I went through. But one thing I always respected about my dad was his military service. That's one thing that I always looked up to. I mean, he took me camping. We played Army. Uh, we played Army a lot out there with my dad, my uncle, my cousin, and my friend. If my friend went along with me, two or three different friends at different times. But yeah, my dad, he used to teach me how to play Army. We played Army out there. He taught me techniques. We're out in the forest in various locations. in the Wenatchee area. We went to camp in Eastern Washington all the time because I was born in Washington State. I was born in Renton, Washington. I don't live there anymore. But yeah, this movie, Rambo, and the whole Vietnam genre thing always is close to me because of my dad. And then, my dad has passed away. My mom passed away in 2020. My dad passed in 2016. And, that story that Stallone tells at the end, that was very dramatic, where he breaks down and cries about his friend being blown up. I've heard very similar stories from other people who were there, and particularly my dad. He told me a story very similar, and he would not have a problem at all with me telling this. I'm not going to tell the story, but he would have no problem at all with me alluding to it if he were alive, so that would be no problem. But yeah, that's something I always respected about my dad and everyone over there who served. And this movie's always been, I will always be a Rambo fan. I love the franchise. And sometimes people might criticize and say he killed too many people. Well, no, he didn't. Which one are you talking about? He only killed one or two people, maybe 1 to 3 people in part one. He killed Galt by throwing the stone at the helicopter. Helicopter pilot lost control. He fell out of the helicopter. Galt deserved to die. And then there was 2 others that possibly might have died in a car crash that Rambo caused. Other than that, it's only like 2 or 3 people in part one. Yeah, part three, it ups the ante. Ups the ante quite a bit, where he does take out a lot of people. But I mean, I've, I know stories about veterans who didn't do what he did in part two with the helicopter and carrying the M60 with one arm and all that, but who took out just as many people as he did in part two. I I know that, but uh, I love the Rambo series. I like part one a lot. Um, I go back and forth on which one I like the best. Part one, I think, is the most touching. I think it's the one that kind of gets to me the most. Part four does that too, almost, but I love them all. Rambo reminds me of a hunter, almost, just to take it out of its normal, uh, just take it out of the normal train of thought, and kind of when he's out there and they're hunting for him, like Mitch said, we're not hunting him, he's hunting us. I think that was true. He set up all those traps. They were looking for him. He could have taken them all out, but he wounded them. He decided to wound them and let them survive, even though he could have killed them. He told the sheriff that. And I think Brian Dennehy does such a good job as the sheriff too. What an actor! He really plays a good villain in here, and he passed away, I believe, a number of years ago. He was such a versatile actor. He played a book or a movie called Bestseller. Played a book, but there was a movie called Bestseller, I think it was called, with him in it. I seen it a long time ago. He's versatile. He plays good guys and bad guys. Obviously, in Rambo, he played a bad guy. He was John Wayne Gacy. I seen him play John Wayne Gacy in a movie a long time ago. He was a very good actor, Brian Dennehy, and I believe he was in the Marine Corps. I do think he was in the Marine Corps in real life, if memory serves me right. I know he was in the service, just can't remember what branch. But this movie is really, really good. The guy that plays Galt, I can't remember his name. He died, I think, not too long after Rambo was made. I think in real life, the actor who played Galt, but he was in Race with the Devil. I think he played a small part in Race with the Devil with Peter Fonda and Warren Oates. That's another movie I saw when I was a kid. Rambo 1 is one of my favorite movies of all time. I like the scenery. I like when he's out there in the forest trying to get away, and then also how he finds that abandoned mine. He has to survive. He makes that that poncho, that covering, at the beginning with the simple rope, and he tied it around himself when he was getting away after the motorcycle went upside down, and then that knife that he had. And I used to have the knife from Rambo Part 3, actually. I used to have that knife. But yeah, it was a heck of a knife. But Rambo 1 with his knife, it was different. It was a different knife. And then the part where he stitched himself up, that was, everyone was talking about that. I remember when I was a kid, people wanted to see that part, and wow, how did they do that? The special effects in here, for what the movie is, it's really good. I think everything in here, everything about this movie works. The pacing is good because it's a chase movie. It is a chase movie, and he's trying to survive. Of course, there's not as much action as there would be in the later films. This movie is primarily powered by a good story, good acting, very dramatic content, very good story to me, and very good acting. And I think Sylvester Stallone really delivers a really good acting performance as John Rambo, the veteran who has PTSD, hard to adjust in society. It's a sad movie. It's a dramatic movie. It has plenty of action if you like action, but mostly I would classify Rambo as a drama with action, and it's a chase movie. Very, very well done. I think it's still one of my favorite movies of all time. I really like this film. You know, I highly recommend it. I love all the Rambo movies, by the way. I don't think there's a bad movie in the franchise. If you like Sylvester Stallone and if you like action, I think you'll like, if you haven't seen it, most people have, but I see a lot of reaction videos on YouTube where people watch it for the first time. So there's an audience out there that hasn't seen it. People of my generation, I think normally they did. I'm 47. I have a lot of nostalgia for 80s movies. Well, whatever movies I grew up on, they could have been reruns. I have nostalgia for the Vikings with Kirk Douglas because even though it's an older, came out long before I was born, and then the Steve Reeve Hercules movies too, Steve Reeves. I have nostalgia for those because I saw the videotapes as a kid. I seen them and watched them over and over again as a kid. So you can have nostalgia for anything that you grew up with. You know, it doesn't, you don't have to be born in that decade to have nostalgia for it. But this movie I do have a lot of nostalgia for. It's a good movie, fun movie in certain ways, but mostly it's dramatic. And I can't say, it's just so fun. You know, the content is very serious. It's sad at times, very sad, especially towards the end. And most people have seen this. All my reviews pretty much are spoiler reviews because I'm always talking, at least almost always talking about movies that I grew up with, movies that have been out for decades, movies that most people have seen, movies that I remember watching as a kid primarily. I highly recommend Rambo with Sylvester Stallone, Brian Dennehy. It's a really good movie. I like it. There's other people in here there's a guy, there's one or two actors in here that were in Miami Vice. I remember watching Miami Vice with Don Johnson when I was a kid. There's at least one guy in here, one of the cops that was in Miami Vice. I think he's the cop that gets the wooden spikes in the legs. And then, of course, the CSI, the redheaded guy in CSI does a good job. Mitch, the guy who plays Mitch, he's the only one in here, or one of the few guys in here in the movie that had sympathy for Rambo, that kind of, knew what they were doing was wrong and actually gave a damn, that it was wrong. And but yeah, this it's a good movie. I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorites of all time. Love Rambo. I love the franchise. I think Sylvester Stallone was perfect for this. Oh, by the way, too, Kirk Douglas, one of my favorites of all time, he was almost chosen to play Rambo, but he wanted a different ending, and they didn't want the ending that he did. I think he wanted Rambo to die at the end for some reason. Of course, it might have been different after Sylvester Stallone came in. I think when Stallone came in, if I remember right, instead of making Rambo more like he was in the book, they made him kind of a full-on hero in the movie. Because in the book, I think he was killing everybody. I never read the book, but I heard that he was killing civilians. He wasn't discriminating too much. But in the movie, he's more of a hero. And the sheriff Teasle, Will Teasle, I believe his name. Brian Dennehy's character is clearly a bad guy. Rambo, Sylvester Stallone's character, is clearly a good guy. So I think it was a little different when Stallone came on board. But yeah, they considered um, Kirk Douglas for this. And Kirk Douglas has always been one of my favorites. him and Stallone always did have like a chiseled face, almost like a Greek or Roman statue with the nose and the chiseledness, and always liked both of them. I grew up watching their movies, loved their movies, really looked up to them. They were always two of my uh, role models and heroes as a kid, and still are. I love their films. But yeah, I highly recommend Rambo. If you haven't seen it by some chance, you're in for a real treat. Please like and subscribe and share this video so they can see this type of content. Please hype it up and pump it up. And thanks for watching. Have a good night, everybody.